we've all heard of the terrible disease ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a neurodegenerative disease in which slow death of motor neurons causes paralysis and ultimately death, usually within 3 to 5 years of diagnosis. To date, there's no cure or treatment, but Neurosense Therapeutics is currently developing a groundbreaking treatment for ALS patients, a drug called Primec, which may offer hope to treat this horrible disease. And here to tell us more about it is Alon Ben Noon, co-founder and CEO of Neurosense. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So what exactly does Neurosense do?
Well, I'll start telling you about Neurosense Therapeutics, which is about a company that develops a drug, as you mentioned, for ALS patients. But we are much more than that. We have a special connection with the patients, and this is what drives us in innovative ways in order to develop an effective drug to these patients. Now, we are developing a drug called Primec, as you mentioned, which underwent preclinical studies, but in novel models of zebrafish, which wasn't traditional at the time, but becoming more and more
common.
Yeah.
More and more common. Okay. And so let me just ask, let's take a step back for 1 second. Let's talk a little bit about ALS. Maybe there are people out there who don't know about this disease. Can you tell me a little bit about it and what it involves?
Yes, of course. So ALS, basically people are referring to it as a disease that you are getting over time more and more paralyzed, and eventually you die from this horrible disease. It's a motor neuron disease in which the motor neurons are degenerating and therefore the muscles are degenerating. People with this disease live on average from 3 to 5 years. Some people live less than 1 year, some patients live over than 10 years. There are currently around 500,000 patients worldwide, 700 patients here in Israel, 30,000 in the United States, all seeking for cure.
And there's no cure and also no treatment today.
Well, actually, there are 2 treatments offered to the patients today, not effective.
Not very effective.
Not very effective. I won't refer to these treatments, but patients are urging for an effective drug that will slow down their disease drastically or even stop the progression of this disease.
And that's where Primec comes in. So what's so groundbreaking about this drug?
So Primec is actually a special formulation of 2 existing molecules combined together in specific doses, and therefore it has a synergistic effect. It causes a synergistic effect to some pathways that we think that are very relevant for ALS patients. We saw it in the zebrafish model that we tested this drug in, with exceptional results. Hundreds of molecules were tested in this model before for ALS. None of them achieved even half of what Primec did. So it significantly was better than any other drug that was screened in this model. And now we are going into the clinical phase, going to test its efficacy in ALS patients.
So you said the preclinical trials. Can you explain what that is? And you used zebrafish, which you said was untraditional.
Right. It used to be untraditional. Now
it's more common.
It's more common.
And how are zebrafish similar in any way to ALS patients, to human beings?
Apparently, they are similar in many ways, especially in the brain structure and the other organs that are related to the CNS, to central nervous system. So we thought that this specific model can be very much predictive for ALS. And we also saw it in Parkinson's disease and in epilepsy, that this model with the zebrafish that has Parkinson or epilepsy is very much predictive for this disease.
Oh, so in past studies, they've done used zebrafish and it's predicted success in actual drugs.
In diseases that are considered close to ALS, CNS diseases.
Okay. And so what happens next? You said you're going to be going towards clinical trials now.
Right, correct. So we intend to test our drug in ALS patients that are, again, they want to try this drug, asked for it for some time now, and this is what we intend to do, to provide them the drug and see if it does what it is supposed to do, what we believe it is going to do to affect them, and slow down the disease or even, hopefully, stop the disease progression.
So you're hoping it will slow down the disease, maybe even provide a cure ultimately?
Well, a cure is a very strong word. We are definitely hoping for a cure, but if we can stop the disease altogether, this will be great news for the patients.
Okay, when do you think the drug could potentially be available to patients?
We estimate that if found effective in the clinical trials, it will be available within 4 years from now.
Wow.
Which, again, great news for patients that will participate in the studies, and even patients that won't be included in the studies, but they want to see that there is some progress in the field.
And I understand that you're now doing a crowdfunding campaign. Is that correct? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
That's correct. And again, it relates to the patients and their families and others that in previous rounds, fundraising rounds, approached us and asked us to take part in these rounds. But since the amounts per participant, per investor was relatively high, now we thought that it's the right way to go with the patients and their families and others that want to invest small amounts in the company, and we are doing it with a platform called PeopleBiz.
Okay.
And again, an innovative way, because no other ALS or even drug development company ever went to
crowdfunding.
To crowdfunding, yes.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much.